Welcome to the Win, Make, Give podcast, season 3. This is Ben Kinney. I'm joined here with Chad Himes.
Hello, Ben.
And Bob Stewart. No, ladies and gentlemen, once again, he ditched us.
It happens.
It's just the Chad and Ben show today, which is good.
Yes.
Because
there's no math.
Maybe there might be.
Uh-oh.
Ladies and gentlemen, if you would have saw the last couple recessions coming, would you have done something different? Would you have not bought something? Would you have not spent that money? Would you have not hired that person? Would you have doubled down in other areas? Would you have not sold that house? What are the things that you would have done if you saw something coming and you could actually do something about it? We are at a point in history where things are okay, but we believe that there is, without a doubt, a shift coming.
Dun, dun, dun.
It's hard to follow that up, the dun, dun, dun thing. Something is happening. Inflation is at all-time highs.
Out of control.
Rates are being increased faster.
Absolutely. Every Fed meeting is a new increase.
Than ever.
Yep.
There's a lot of chaos. And if you know anything about the government,
that teach us.
what the government does when they're a problem is they overcompensate.
Yes.
They overcompensate.
Yes.
When COVID happened, they dumped $4 trillion into the U.S. economy.
Yes.
Only to wake up a year and a half later and say, my goodness, people are spending more money than they should. Prices are going up. We have this thing called inflation.
Yep.
We went from an average inflation of like 1.7% to 2% annually, all of a sudden to 8%, almost 9%.
Yeah, it's just crazy what happened.
Well, when you print money and give it to everybody, that's what happens, ladies and gentlemen.
Amen.
You have a problem. So what the government does when things like inflation get out of control, they try to taper it down by increasing interest rates.
Yes.
Traditionally, the government overcompensates and it'll overslow the economy, which will put us into a recession.
Yeah.
To the degree that they do that, Chad, we could either see a nice soft landing where everything feels normal, or we see lots of layoffs, economic, just bad times overall. What was that? Uncertainty, fear, chaos, people selling things, people stop hiring, people stop growing businesses.
It's that person driving down the road. We've all had this person. We're going down the highway just fine. We see that there's something happening up ahead, and then one person just hits their brakes. I mean, no, you could just coast to slow down, or you could hit your brakes and then cause this huge ripple effect, and that's what we're seeing is coming.
Yeah. So this season 3 is about making
a difference, making an impact, and making more money.
And making cake.
Making cake.
As we referred to in the previous...
In a recent episode, yes.
By the way, ladies and gentlemen, send us your best cake recipe, and you might win a prize. You can put it on our Facebook group.
Okay.
Make a picture of it. We might get you extra votes. You never know.
Anyway, cake and even better, right?
Making money sometimes means protecting your money and saving your money, so that over time, when opportunities come around, you can actually make it. So today, we're going to talk about this idea that a recession is guaranteed and a recession is going to happen.
Right.
So this is the recession preparation episode of Win, Make, Give.
Insert music.
Yeah, insert music.
There should be something there, Dave, right?
But before, let's go back in history a little bit, Chad, and you did a little bit of research.
I did, because you actually gave me a moment before this podcast episode where you said, let's talk about this possibility and what's happening of a recession. And then you took a phone call. So quickly I jumped on the internet and did some research, Ben.
Okay, tell us what you learned from the interwebs.
All right, the interwebs have taught me this. The first recession occurred in 1797. I want everyone to realize they've been around a while.
How old were you then?
Jerk. All right. And they have been caused by multiple different things. And we're going to come to that, talking about some of the things that caused those after. But I just want to point out some of the things. In the 20th century, there were 12 recessions worth noting. And some of the ones that'll come to mind for people would be the Great Depression, Okay, so that was 1929 through 1938. Now, don't panic. It wasn't a 10-year recession. It was actually two closely related recessions that happened within those 10 years that caused the Depression. It was not one occurrence.
Interesting.
Okay. Since World War II, Ben, we have had 12 recessions. And the average recession, so breathe, people, the average recession, 10 to 11 months.
Okay.
Okay. We have had 10, 11 months show up often as the amount of time that a recession is. We have actually had recessions that were short, and we've had recessions that were a little longer. The recession that hit us in 1990, for example, lasted for less than a year. Again, like in this less than the 10-month period even. In 1980, yes, I'm old enough to remember this one. Thank you very much. In 1980, again, it was actually two recessions occurred over 2 years. So it wasn't one big one. We had a 6-month one, and then we had a 16-month one within a few months after that. That created what we remember as some of the biggest and worst times, and many reasons to have had them. The most recent one, Ben, that everyone's going to think of, we're not going to think of 2020. We're probably going to think of 2008. If I were to ask people when was the last recession, that would probably be what comes to mind. And it was called the Great Recession, lasted from December 07 to June of 09, and it was the longest one since the Great Depression. Then the 2020 recession came along, which, folks, was the worst since the Depression. Not in length, just in worse, where our economy actually fell 31.2% in the second quarter alone that year, which is what caused it. Now, Ben, there's one that's very special that stands out that nobody pays attention to. Might be the best or worst recession we ever had. That was 1907. It was called the Panic of 1907. That's what they referred to it as. No, I was not there for it. Okay. It was caused by speculators' losses that spread to the trust companies. And it's because of the 1907 recession that Congress created the Fed. So that's when the Fed came along to prevent future collapses. Now, have they done a good job of that? I don't know.
Yeah.
Many of the depressions or recessions that we've had are truly attributed to the Fed caused this one. And that's what we're kind of seeing happen right now.
The Fed, for everybody's kind of FYI, the Fed manages the monetary policy of the government at which it represents.
Yes.
So most governments in the world have their own.
Correct. Bob and I covered this on a recent episode. We dove deep into the Fed, how the Fed rate works, and all of that kind of stuff. So we've given them that history. Make sure you check out that episode.
Their piece of leverage, as we already talked about today, is interest rates.
Yes.
Okay, great. So history. There's been a lot of recessions.
Yep.
Probably a handful since you were born. If you're listening to this podcast, maybe 3, maybe 5. There's some.
Yep.
Right?
Absolutely.
But what actually causes them? We found that there are 12 consistent causes of a recession.
Yes.
Most people measure a recession as a reduction in the GDP, the gross domestic product, right? The GDP is the measure of all goods and services consumed within our country, including government spending, the difference between imports and exports, consumer spending, public spending, all that, all combined together. It's trillions and trillions of dollars. But when it goes down for 2 quarters, that is what they mark as a recession.
Yes. 2 successive quarters, which could be as short as 6 months, therefore. And we have had recessions that lasted only 6 months.
Okay. So let's go through a couple of the causes. We started with history.
Yep.
We're going to go through some causes.
Yep. And then what can we do about it?
And then we're going to end with what
we can do about
What can we do about it?
Yeah.
Okay, I like that. Number 1. And I think it's one of the biggest causes.
Yep.
The loss of confidence in the economy or in specific investments.
Absolutely.
Think about when crypto falls apart, when the stock market falls apart,
Yep.
or when real estate falls apart.
Yep.
Most of it is not because the value of the underlying asset has changed. it's usually all based on consumer fear.
Yes.
Like a lot of people in 2008 didn't need to sell their home, but they felt that they should because it was underwater and it was getting worse and worse every month. But every single person who kept their home from 2008 to now is sure glad they did,
Oh, yeah.
right? But
Absolutely.
that fear drives it. Panic sets in, and the mass of individuals move towards getting rid of whatever that asset is.
Yep.
Businesses hire less people. They lay off people. People stop spending money. Manufacturers stop manufacturing as many things.
It's a vicious cycle.
It's just a
What
bunch of
ends up
dominoes
happening, right?
falling over.
Yeah.
Second thing that can cause a recession.
Yep.
Ladies and gentlemen, listen to this one. High interest rates.
Shocker.
High interest rates limit what consumers spend with their credit cards, going to college, on their houses, and on their cars. As the rate goes up, we sit back and say, do we really need that, or can we afford it?
Right.
With the Fed increasing interest rates last month, depending on when
June and July,
right? When you listen by one of the greatest increases ever, or in a long time, 0.75%, with another expected 0.5% in July of whatever year this is, 2022.
Yes.
You're going to see more and more people say, I don't know if I need that.
Correct. And in September, when they meet again, barring how the economy is doing, there's a reasonable expectation that they raise it even more.
So the number two reason why recessions happen, higher interest rates, we can just kind of check that one as, well, that's happening.
Yep.
The first one, the loss of confidence, just read the news. All I read is there a housing bubble? Is crypto going to zero?
Right.
Should you get rid of your stocks? Like, it's just a lot of that news, and it causes...
News sells panic. That's how they sell, and most people read nothing other than the headline. So, of course, when the headline says, is the housing bubble popping? Everybody runs around and says, the housing bubble's popping, even though they didn't read the article and find out whether it is or it isn't. They panic. You're absolutely right, Ben.
Next one.
Yep. Next one you already talked about, which would be the stock market and or falling house prices, right? Those come under that confidence category.
Yeah. So when the stock market dropped in 2001, we called it the dot-com bust or bubble, right? We went into a little bit of a recession there, didn't we?
Yes, we did.
A lot of people lost a lot of money. People borrowed money to buy stocks because everybody was getting rich no matter what they bought. And then it blew up and it hurt a lot of people. It caused a recession.
Yep.
Companies shrank, they laid off people, etc. Now, falling housing prices, which started occurring nationwide in 2008, but started occurring in some geographies as early as 2006.
I remember it.
Caused what many people call as the Great Recession, which lasted, a couple years.
Yep.
It was a tough time. Manufacturing. One thing that can predict a future recession is a reduction in the amount of manufacturing orders. Cars being made, widgets printed, aluminum cans, whatever, right?
Yep.
When manufacturers get a slowdown, that affects a lot of people because so many people are employed by the manufacturers, by the people that create bare goods, what do you call it? Raw materials for those manufacturing, or the people that receive those manufactured goods that sell retail or wholesale or so on.
Correct. And there's probably a slowdown, Ben, because there was a surplus coming into it. So they've slowed down. Companies slow down their orders. Manufacturing, therefore, slows down. What we know is that's going to start to create that supply and demand curve, which is then going to cause the upcoming recession.
It's not an exact representation of manufacturing, but you could tie it also to new home construction.
Yes.
When new home construction prices drop below what a resale home will sell for, you know that there's a problem.
Yes.
Because people don't buy new homes or don't buy old homes when they can buy a brand new home of the same condition, same size, same lot, area, whatever, for less money.
Right.
That is another one. Deregulation. Changes in laws government rules, or even which political party is currently in office can trigger positive or negative impacts to the economy, and it can last for quarters, which would cause a recession.
Sure. Like the saving and loans crisis that we had back in the early 80s.
Exactly.
Yeah. I know you were too young to remember that one.
Thank you. Poor management. Bad business practices cause recessions.
Yeah.
I think of like Enron.
Yeah, bad business, you're just going to destroy your business. Yet if you are a big enough business like Enron or one of the banks, think about 2008's
Yeah.
recession. That it was bad management in the banks leading up to that caused a lot of those loans to go out there, that caused a lot of the defaults.
If you want to watch a movie that will like blow your mind, I think it's underrated and a lot of people haven't watched it. Margin Call. Have you
Okay.
seen it?
I haven't seen Margin Call. I thought you were going to say The Big Short. So
Big Short is good, but Margin Call is phenomenal.
I'll check it out.
And what Margin Call does is it's an example of the 24 hours prior to all the banks in 2008 dumping all their mortgage-backed securities and
Right.
just getting rid of it because they realized that they were over leveraged. They had borrowed too much money to own these assets,
Yep.
and there was a problem. And it walks through the very first bank that got out first and survived, and everybody else was basically ruined. That is an amazing example of poor management.
Yes.
They did a mathematical error and all of a sudden realized that they were over leveraged and the assets they had under management in their mortgage-backed securities were not equal to the actual value of that they were saying the funds were worth. That's a problem.
Okay.
Post-war slowdowns.
Yes.
There is often an economic boom from a war,
Yeah.
right?
Yes, there is. It's always been, we've seen it in all the wars that have happened.
Actually, I worked for this guy when I was, I don't know, 18, 19 years old who owned a furniture store. And he would go out of business every year or two. He would do the going out of business sale and he would mark everything down 20%, 30%, 40%
Yep.
from his already marked up 200 or 300%,
course.
right? And he made so much money in those going out of business sales that it was worth it for him to do that and rebrand every year or two into this new business. Just killed it. That's kind of like taking advantage of this war. Wars create economic stimulus because money is spent.
Yes.
But after a war,
We don't need to order the ammunition that was being created. The manufacturing slows down. It almost ties right back to that one, Ben. And we see a lot of the cutbacks start happening.
yeah, after World War One, after the Korean War, after World War Two, all were examples of wars causing recessions.
Yep.
Credit crunches. So when the government says we are not going to loan as much money, or banks say it's harder to borrow money, businesses that have relied on debt, lines of credit to grow, or venture capital or private equity to run their businesses can no longer operate.
Yep.
If you're in a company that requires venture capital or private equity to invest in it every couple of years because it loses money, this might be one of these times in history where your company may not exist in the next year or two.
Right.
Because companies are struggling to raise money if they are losing money.
Yes.
There's a big race in startups to get to break even or cash flow positive. They're doing that by laying people off, gutting things, getting rid of initiatives, all that, because there's a credit crunch. They can't borrow money.
Okay.
The US government has been doing something called quantitative easing since COVID. What that means is, in order for banks to loan more money, the banks have to sell the loans that are on their balance sheet to somebody else because they can only loan out a certain percentage of the deposits they have in their bank. So if I have $1,000 deposited in Ben and Chad's bank,
Yep.
we might be able to loan out $40 to people.
Sure.
But if it got to 42, we have to sell at least $2 worth of those loans to somebody else.
Which is why your mortgage gets sold to somebody else.
Every month it's somebody else's name on the statement.
Right.
Right. So what the government's done is it says, hey, we'll buy them. and they flooded the financial world because they were buying every loan that was being created since the COVID crisis.
Right.
That's quantitative easing. Well, that created stimulus. The economy survived COVID, but it overstimulated it.
Yes.
It's always a problem being
Yep.
overstimulated, right? It was overstimulated. So now what the government's saying is we're going to do something called quantitative tightening, which means we are going to buy less and potentially even sell the ones that we have. If there is nobody available to buy those loans, the people given the loans will have to charge higher interest to attract other people to buy those loans, which raises interest, which is another flag for a recession.
So that's a lot of reasons that a recession could happen. And when I was doing my homework, I was really, there's no one that seems to always show up. Sometimes it was the Fed with inflation and interest rates. Sometimes it was real estate prices. Sometimes it was the oil crisis started things with manufacturing. So Ben, we've given them a little history. We've shared with them some of the major triggers. You got another trigger for me?
Well, we just didn't get to all 12. We said there was 12. Did we say 12?
We
Did
said
we say
12 at
10?
one point, but then we kind of merged a few of them into one of them. So I kind of stopped counting on
There's
you.
just a couple more.
All right, give us what else
Sorry,
is still
I
out there.
apologize, Chad. When a bubble burst,
Sure.
tech stocks,
Housing,
housing,
gold.
gold,
Yep.
oil,
Yep.
crypto.
Yeah.
When bubbles burst, recessions can happen.
Okay.
Next one, deflation. There's a term that you all should Google called stagflation. Stagflation is what happens when there's a slowdown in the recession or a slowdown in the economy, when there is a reduction in the workforce so that nobody's hiring, and prices are no longer going up, they're going down.
Okay.
You combine all those things, it's a tough time.
Sure.
Deflation, people don't spend money because they said, hey, I bought this piece of gold for $1. Now it's worth 98 cents. Why would I buy more? I bought this stock for $100. Now it's worth 75 bucks. Why should I buy more? I bought this house for 100,000. Now it's worth 80,000. Why would I buy another one?
Right.
Deflation stops people from spending. So when you go through all these things, Chad,
Yep.
confidence, interest rates, crashes, home prices, manufacturing, management, wars, credit crunches, deflation. There's all these different things.
Yep.
They all cause recessions.
Right.
I think we have 3 or 4 of those things happening right now that could cause us to have a recession that lasts longer than a short one.
Right. So we might not be looking at one of those 10-month recessions. We might have one that's closer to 16, 24 months could be what's ahead of us, depending on how this all levels out.
We might. Now, Chad and Ben could be 100% wrong. It's happened at least once in the past.
At least once.
At least once. However, what happens if you plan for it and it ends sooner?
I don't think that's a bad thing.
We end up winning.
Yeah.
I like coming up with plans where no matter what happens, we win.
Okay.
So what I did, Chad, is I went out and I said, let's plan for an apocalypse.
Ooh.
Plan for an apocalypse. What does that mean?
Well, apocalypse would be the end of the world, Ben. So to some people, they might think that's what's about to happen.
Like zombies?
Yeah. Sure. Okay.
I've been planning for zombies my entire life. I'm like super jacked up about that.
You know, we could have, War of the Worlds type thing
Oh, that
where,
could happen.
aliens come down and finally apocalypse.
Apocalypse planning.
Yes.
In a book, which I can't remember the title of, but I will in a second, he wrote, it turns out that the key to getting rich is to avoid doing stupid things. The vast majority of the dumb tax is a direct result of emotional and optimistic decisions. Let me read that one more time.
The book is The Road Less Stupid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. Yeah. By Mr. Cunningham, correct?
Yes.
Yes. Great. It turns out that the key to getting rich is to avoid doing stupid things. The vast majority of the dumb tax is a direct result of emotional and optimistic decisions. So if we want to avoid paying the dumb tax, which is what happens in economic shifts or recessions,
Yep.
we have to be careful that we aren't making emotional decisions or running our businesses or our lives off optimistic decisions.
You know, it's
If
interesting.
you build it, they will come, so to speak.
Yeah, it's interesting. When I look back at one of the episodes we recorded earlier, you and I, where we were talking about Winston Churchill, right? You were talking about making sure that we stay calm during chaos, right? We were talking about that wartime CEO. They do not get emotional. They're the ones who can stay calm and keep logic during that. They're the ones that are not optimistic and saying, oh, this is going to happen. They're the ones who say, this is what I see happening, and here's worst case scenario. Let's plan and work through that. So help us, Ben. We've got this apocalypse a-coming. Help us get through this. What are some of the questions we should ask ourselves or some of the preparation we can do?
Yeah, I wrote down some questions that I want you all as an audience to think about. Just answer for yourself.
Okay.
Number one, why isn't my business more profitable based on the revenue I'm making now? Or another way to think about it in your personal life, why is it that I don't have extra money left at the end of the month or more extra money than I do now
Okay.
based on the current income that I'm making?
Sure. Good question.
We need to pretend that our worst month in business or our worst month personally is the new average month during a recession. So traditionally, Chad, in real estate, what's the worst month of the year?
Depending on where you are, I always find it's actually like September when everyone goes back to school.
Okay.
It really comes to a slowdown.
Yeah, in my market, September was always decent, but I found that maybe November or January was a really bad month.
Sure.
For whatever reason.
Yep.
Holidays, people taking time off, whatever. Okay. Every business, every geography has good months and bad months.
Yep.
Like I imagine Arizona's best months are in December and November and January.
Correct.
because
And
it's
nobody
awesome.
wants to buy there in July and August.
Right, right.
Right, yeah.
Okay. But imagine that your worst month is your new average month.
Okay.
If that happened, how long could you survive? If you lost your job today, how long could you survive? Because when you get into a recession, that's a real reality.
Sure.
My joke for the cable company, I work for Comcast, will probably never be a sponsor here because I make fun of them so much,
I wouldn't let them.
is I got canned more than tuna there.
Right.
I didn't have a long career at Comcast, but I had gotten laid off 3 times. In all fairness to Comcast, it was only once at Comcast and twice at the companies previously called Comcast.
Right, yeah.
Right? They were called whatever, TCI, AT&T, whatever it was. But for 3 times, it was hard for me to plan my life because I didn't know if I was going to have a job.
Right.
I read an article this morning about how the tides are turning. We had this great resignation phrase, which made me nauseous as a business owner to read for the last year or so.
Right.
And this, the article was basically, hey, the tides are turning. Those people who kind of held their companies hostage and threatened to leave might have a reckoning coming.
Yep.
It's the people that worked hard the entire time, that were loyal, that were rewarded financially, right, that are going to keep a spot in the company. I just thought that was interesting.
Yep.
Next question. Where am I currently in business or personally incurring costs that do not either support keeping my customers or getting new ones, or personally covering my basic needed expenses?
Yes.
Where am I currently incurring costs? What I'm asking is that you think you could actually do without.
Right. That are no good. They're useless costs that you had when the economy was good. And you've just said, yeah, they're probably good and haven't done an analysis of them.
Yeah. Be willing to make tough decisions
Yep.
and get rid of things and see how it goes. My friend Brian Gubernick wrote this question, and it's so good. If I had a board of directors and the board of directors fired me and brought in a new CEO, what changes would the new CEO make tomorrow?
And you're asking this question so that I go make those changes right now.
Most likely, the changes a new CEO would make are changes that we know we should make now, but for whatever reason, we're not. Relationships, fear,
Yep.
optimism.
Good question, Brian. Thanks for adding that one.
If I had a board of directors and the board fired me and brought in a new CEO, what changes would the new CEO make tomorrow?
And that can apply for at home too. You can consider board of directors and that you might be the CEO of your family.
For sure.
What would happen if you were
somebody
fired from
else
that
was
role?
managing the personal, the family, the household expenses?
Yep. What changes would they make?
What would they do tomorrow?
Yeah, I'd probably cut HBO.
Probably. You just sign into mine anyway.
Don't tell them all that secret. All right.
If I had to increase my cash on hand by 20% in the next 60 days, how would I do this?
Cash on hand is the
Cash
key
in
of
your
that.
bank account.
Right.
Because cash is king in a recession.
Yep.
And if there's a credit crunch, you can't get the money.
Right.
One of my myths in 2007 and 2008 was I had lots of wealth. My wealth was wrapped up into real estate. I had access to it because I had lines of credit on real estate. But in one day it went away and I could no longer access it.
Right.
Don't believe that you'll have access to credit during a recession. So, what can you do to increase your cash right now by at least 20%? That just increases your survivability. I already kind of said this question, but I'll repeat it.
Yep.
What if the worst month I have was my new average month? Ask yourself the question, how long would you survive? If a recession is going to last 6 months, could you survive it? Or 9 months? Or 12 months?
So, Ben, what you're telling me is I should go back to the wealth series and I should listen to Save Like Crazy and I should be doing the red, yellow, green exercise yesterday.
Yeah. You put everything. Red, we get rid of right away.
Yep.
Yellow, we research, we negotiate, we try to go without, we cut it in half, whatever it might be.
Right.
And green, we have to pay our rent, our health insurance, our utilities, our car payment, whatever that might be.
Okay.
But we need to go out there and we need to do the highlighter experiment on our expenses.
Yep.
Right away. You do it on your business and you do it on your personal. Everybody, print out your credit card statements, print out your bank statements, grab 3 highlighters, red, yellow, and green, and just go through every single line item and just say, do I need this? Could I get rid of it? And then do it. Take action, as Winston Churchill says, today.
You know, one of the things you mentioned there was credit cards. And one of the things I want to make sure everyone knows, it's if you have credit card debt, as the interest rates go up, the credit card's going to change its interest rate as well. So unless you're locked in on some 0% term that the card gave you because it's a new card and you've transferred everything there, understand that the 18% you paid on your credit card last month might not be 18% these next coming months as the Fed raises the Fed rate, which therefore raises all the interest rates around the country.
Yeah, well said.
Okay, so clean those debts up, get yourself debt free. All right, Ben, so you've shared the history. We shared some reasons for it. You shared some questions we can ask ourselves. Give us one last thought from Ben Kinney. You don't have a crystal ball, but from Ben Kinney, give us one last thought with the upcoming recession. What should everybody do, or what do you see? Give us something.
Here's the end. I want you to bulletproof your household and bulletproof your business through doing something. Expense reduction, find other sources of income. If your business is driven by salespeople, hire more salespeople. If your business is driven by converting leads into sales, double down on converting your leads. If you don't have enough leads to get your business growing, find a way to generate more leads affordably as fast as possible.
You know, this might be a great opportunity for business owners because as people might get laid off from other companies, especially if you are running some sort of sales industry where it's a commission base, you might be able to give some great people some great opportunities and be surprised by the results they could bring.
Yeah, well said. Write this down, ladies and gentlemen. How am I going to bulletproof my business? How am I going to bulletproof my household to survive a recession of an indefinite amount of time? Let's make a decision now, because the greatest distributions of wealth happen in down markets, not up markets.
Right.
This is not bad news. This is not a scary podcast. This is I'm preparing you to take advantage of opportunities when they come, and they will come.
Yes. Well said, Ben. I'm going to leave you all with this. Stay calm. This is not panic time. This is just awareness time. You want something to do for homework? Go to winmakegive.com/wealth. Go back and take the original Wealth series while we're getting ready to bring you the new Wealth 2.0. You know what? The original still helps clean things up and get you ready to be in a position to survive what might be ahead. Join us in our Facebook group. That's Win, Make, Give, where we will continue this conversation. And until our next episode, as always, do good.